I was sitting in the Cascade conference room, third floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Portland, the kind of room they use when they want you to feel small against the skyline, when my manager told me I was being transitioned out to make room for fresh talent with a growth mindset. The fresh talent was her sister, and she couldn't read a pivot table. My name is Elena Voss. I'm 41. For 13 years, I was the Senior Financial Analyst at Meridian Solutions, a mid-sized procurement software company that helped enterprise clients manage vendor relationships, contract compliance, and spend analytics. We weren't flashy. We were reliable. And reliability in procurement is the only currency that matters. I built the systems that made that reliability possible. I designed the Compass reporting framework, a custom analytics layer that integrated procurement data across 14 different ERP systems and generated compliance dashboards for our largest clients. I managed the Atlas client portfolio, overseeing $127 million in annual contract value across 23 enterprise accounts with a 97% retention rate over 5 years. I led the migration to our new data warehouse, Project Beacon, without a single day of client-facing downtime, coordinating across engineering, IT, and customer success for 9 months straight. Under my oversight, our flagship client, Vanguard Industries, expanded their contract from $4.2 million to $11.8 million annually because I identified $3.7 million in procurement inefficiencies they didn't know existed. I didn't just run reports. I found money. The sacrifices were quieter but no less real. I hadn't taken a full 2-week vacation in 4 years. I missed my nephew's high school graduation because a client audit deadline fell on the same weekend, and I was the only person who understood the data lineage well enough to certify it. I once worked through a stomach flu because a board presentation depended on variance analysis I'd been building for 3 weeks, and no one else could explain the methodology. Quiet. Methodical. Thorough. The kind of person who doesn't get noticed until they're gone. And then you notice everything. My manager's name was Diane Kellerman. She was 46, polished in the way people are when they've learned to mistake confidence for competence. She'd joined Meridian 4 years ago as Director of Client Analytics after a stint in management consulting, the kind of consulting where you learn frameworks but never have to live with the consequences of your recommendations. She wore tailored blazers that were always slightly too structured, like armor. She spoke in the cadence of someone who'd attended too many leadership seminars, every sentence a mission statement, every observation a key takeaway. She had a habit of nodding vigorously while you spoke, then repeating your idea back to you in worse words and claiming it as a synthesis. And she had a sister. Brooke Kellerman was 29, cheerful in the aggressive way of someone who mistakes enthusiasm for skill. She had a bachelor's degree in communications and 2 years of experience as a social media coordinator for a local nonprofit. She did not have a background in finance, data analysis, procurement, or anything adjacent to what we did. But she had Diane. That morning in Cascade, Diane sat across from me with her hands folded on the table, a posture I recognized from every performance review where she'd tried to sound thoughtful while saying nothing. "Elena," she began, voice warm and careful, "I want to start by acknowledging everything you've contributed. You've been a cornerstone of this team." Cornerstone. Past tense. I didn't respond. I just waited. She continued, "But as we think about the future, we need to be more agile, more innovative. We need people who can think outside the traditional analytics box and bring fresh energy to client engagement." Fresh energy. That was the phrase she'd workshopped. "We're restructuring," Diane said, leaning forward slightly, as if proximity made the lie more believable. "Your role is being eliminated. But we're creating a new position, Client Engagement Analyst, focused on relationship building and strategic storytelling." Strategic storytelling. I felt something cold settle in my chest, not panic, just recognition. "And you're offering me that role?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Diane's smile tightened. "Actually, we've already filled it. Brooke Kellerman, my sister, will be joining the team. She has a real gift for communication, and we think she'll bring a perspective we've been missing." There it was. I looked at Diane. Her expression was pleasant, controlled, rehearsed. She thought she'd insulated herself with corporate language. Restructuring. Elimination. Strategic. Brooke doesn't have a finance background, I said, voice calm and factual. Diane waved a hand, dismissive. She's a fast learner. And honestly, Elena, the role is evolving. We need less number crunching and more client-facing creativity. Brooke's going to help us optimize our engagement bandwidth and synergize our value propositions. Optimize our engagement bandwidth. I stared at her for a beat, watching her nod at her own sentence like it meant something. When does this take effect? I asked. End of the week, Diane said. We'll provide 2 weeks severance and a reference letter. HR will walk you through the details. 2 weeks severance. For 13 years. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't ask her to reconsider. I just said, understood. Diane looked almost relieved, like she'd expected resistance and was grateful to skip it. I really do think this is best for everyone, she said, standing, smoothing her blazer. You're talented, Elena. You'll land somewhere great. I nodded once. She left. I sat there for a moment in that glass-walled room, the city sprawling below me, indifferent and bright, and I thought about the Compass reporting framework, about the 47 custom dashboards I'd built, about the data pipelines I'd architected, about the client relationships I'd maintained through late-night calls and weekend troubleshooting. And I thought about Brooke Kellerman, who couldn't read a pivot table, sitting at my desk. Then I stood up, walked to my office, and started downloading files. Not everything, just documentation. My work, my designs, my methodologies. The things I'd built that had my name in the commit logs and my logic in the formulas. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning survival. And as it turned out, survival has a way of becoming something else entirely. That afternoon, I met with Vanessa Ortiz, Meridian's VP of Customer Success. We'd worked together for years. She was sharp, direct, and one of the few executives who understood that analytics wasn't a support function, it was the product. She found me in the break room, packing my personal coffee mug into a box that felt too small for 13 years. Elena, she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we were alone. I heard. Fast, I said. Diane sent an org announcement, Vanessa said, mouth tight. She framed it as exciting changes. Of course she did. Vanessa crossed her arms. This is insane. You're the reason half our clients stay. Apparently not, I said. Vanessa shook her head. Brooke Kellerman has no idea what you do. I've met her. She asked me if we do analytics in Excel or PowerPoint. I almost laughed. Almost. Diane thinks she can train her, I said. Diane thinks a lot of things, Vanessa muttered. Then, softer, what are you going to do? I looked at her. Vanessa had always been honest with me. I decided to return the favor. I'm going to be fine, I said. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. Yeah, you will be. She handed me her personal cell number on a post-it note. If you need a reference. Or anything else. I took it. Thank you. She hesitated at the door. Elena, Vanguard's renewal is in 3 months. Brooke's going to be the lead analyst on their account. I didn't say anything. Vanessa's expression was somewhere between sympathy and warning. Just, thought you should know. She left. I stood there, holding that post-it note, and felt the first flicker of something that wasn't quite anger. It was clarity. Because Vanguard Industries wasn't just any client. They were our largest client. $11.8 million annually. And I had built every dashboard, every report, every compliance workflow they relied on. Brooke Kellerman was about to inherit a system she didn't understand, for a client she'd never met, with a renewal deadline she probably didn't even know existed. And Diane thought this was a good idea. I walked out of Meridian Solutions that Friday afternoon with a box of personal items, a severance check for $8,400, and a USB drive full of documentation that proved I'd built everything they were about to break. If my story resonates with you, make sure to like and subscribe. I share workplace strategy and corporate analysis every week that might just change how you navigate your career. I didn't know it yet, but 3 weeks later, I'd get a call from Vanguard Industries. And 6 months after that, I'd be sitting in Diane Kellerman's office as her boss. What Diane didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this exact kind of conversation since the first time she called my work supporting materials. That was June 14th, 2023, 9:17 a.m. in Cascade. Same room, same glass walls, same view that makes executives feel poetic about other people's labor. She tapped my printed variance report with a manicured nail and said, "This is great, Elena. Very detailed. We just need to elevate it into a narrative. Make the numbers more snackable. Snackable numbers. Like compliance risk is a granola bar." I didn't argue. I just wrote down the phrase later because it told me something important. Diane experienced reality primarily through metaphor. And metaphors don't reconcile accounts. So I did what I always do when I'm given a warning disguised as feedback. I built guardrails. On August 2nd, 2023, at 6:48 p.m., after a Vanguard escalation call that ate my entire evening, I sent an email to myself and to Vanessa Ortiz, Compass Framework, Ownership and Methodology Summary. It wasn't dramatic. It was a clean, boring document. Diagrams. Data lineage. A list of the 47 dashboards by name. A chart showing which client relied on which module. And, tucked into the appendix, the thing that mattered, a section titled Authoritative Methodology. Plain language. Step-by-step explanation of how our compliance scoring worked, including all formulas, thresholds, and audit assumptions. It was the kind of document nobody reads until they're on fire. I also learned, quietly, what my contract said. On March 3rd, 2024, at 7:12 a.m., I pulled up my employment agreement and the client MSAs on my personal laptop with a cup of coffee and the kind of calm that comes from already suspecting the answer. Meridian Standard MSA with Vanguard had a key clause, section 9.4, called Key Personnel. It wasn't unusual. Lots of enterprise contracts have them. But ours had teeth. It named me, not by title, by name, Elena Voss. If Meridian removed me from Vanguard's account without Vanguard's written consent, Vanguard could terminate for cause with 30 days' notice. No penalties. No drawn-out negotiation. Just gone. That clause existed because Vanguard's procurement team had insisted on it after a disaster 5 years earlier, when Meridian swapped out a senior analyst and the new person accidentally broke their quarterly compliance certification. I remembered that week vividly. I remembered the late nights. I remembered the client's cold silence on calls. And I remembered thinking, someone will try this again. So I built another layer of leverage, the kind you can only build if you understand how organizations actually work. On November 18th, 2024, 10:33 p.m., I created what I called the Beacon Binder, an internal runbook for Project Beacon and Compass combined. It lived in Confluence, but it wasn't indexed properly, and it wasn't on the main team page. It was buried under a parent page titled Legacy Reference, the corporate equivalent of hiding valuables in a cereal box. Inside were the credentials request procedures, data refresh schedules, exception handling, and the exact steps to run Vanguard's quarterly audit pack. It included screenshots and sample outputs. It was so thorough it bordered on impolite. I didn't do any of this because I wanted to win. I did it because I'd watched competent people get blamed for disasters they didn't cause, and I prefer my disasters to be traceable. So when Diane looked at me in Cascade and told me my role was being eliminated, I wasn't shocked. I was confirmed. 2 days later, the first crack appeared exactly where it always does. Vanguard's Monday morning spend report didn't go out. It sounds small until you understand what it is. A $6.2 billion manufacturer relying on a single report to approve vendor payments and flag contract violations. That report was the beginning of their week. Without it, procurement stalls. Finance calls. Legal gets itchy. At 9:06 a.m., my personal phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code 312. Chicago. Vanguard. I answered. "Elena," a man said, voice clipped. "This is Martin Cho, Director of Procurement Analytics at Vanguard Industries." "Hi, Martin," I said. "What's wrong?" A pause. Not because he didn't know. Because he was choosing how much politeness to spend. We didn't receive the Meridian compliance packet, he said. It's 9:06. It was due at 7:30. I'm no longer with Meridian, I said, calm and factual. Silence. Then, sharper, since when? Friday, I said. Another pause, longer this time. And Meridian didn't notify us, Martin said. It wasn't a question. They didn't, I said. I could hear him exhale through his nose. Controlled irritation. The kind that becomes policy changes. Who's your replacement? He asked. I don't know, I said, because I didn't. I just need the name of the person sitting at my desk. Okay, Martin said. Stay available. I'm calling Meridian now. He hung up. At 9:14 a.m., Diane called me. Her voice was bright in that brittle way people sound when they're trying to convince themselves they're in control. Elena. Hi. Quick touch point, she said. We're having a little continuity hiccup with Vanguard's reporting deliverable. Nothing major. But it would really help if you could jump on a call and align us on the workflow. Align us on the workflow. You have the documentation, I said. A tiny pause. Right, yes, but Brooke is still onboarding into the operational cadence, and we just need you to, transfer the knowledge efficiently. Transfer the knowledge. Like it was a thumb drive. No, I said. Diane laughed lightly, like I'd made a joke. Elena, come on. This is about the client. It's bigger than personal feelings. It's contractual, I said. Her voice tightened. Excuse me. You're not authorized to remove me from Vanguard, I said, still calm. Section 9.4. Silence. Not the thoughtful kind. The scrambling kind. The sound of someone realizing the floor has a trapdoor. Diane began, then stopped. You could hear her shuffling papers, like the right document might save her if she found it fast enough. Good luck, I said, and ended the call. At 9:27 a.m., I got a voicemail from Brooke. Her voice was cheerful and rushed, like a camp counselor trying to manage a fire. Hi, Elena. It's Brooke, Diane's sister, so I'm stepping into your position, which is super exciting. I'm just trying to get the compass thing running. The dashboard is, not populating. It says refresh failed. Do you know where the refresh button is? Anyway, call me. Refresh button. I stared at my phone for a moment, and I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction. Relief. Because now I knew this wouldn't be subtle. It would be obvious. And obvious is easier to prove. By the end of that day, Vanguard issued Meridian a formal notice, reporting deliverables missed. Immediate remediation required within 48 hours. Failure will be considered material breach. Material breach is the corporate version of a hand on your throat. That night, Vanessa called me. Her voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath it, not at me. At the stupidity. They didn't tell Vanguard, she said. I know, I replied. Diane is panicking, Vanessa said. She's saying you're being uncooperative. I'm being accurate, I said. Vanessa exhaled. Martin asked for you by name. I didn't respond. I let that land. Vanessa continued, he said, and I quote, if Elena Voss isn't doing our compliance pack, we're not paying $11.8 million for vibes. That was Martin. Direct. Economical. A man who didn't confuse narrative with controls. I said, what do you want from me? Vanessa paused. Honestly, I want you to get paid what you're worth. Because they're about to try to make this your fault. They can try, I said. 48 hours after the firing, the second crack turned into a fracture. Brooke, attempting to simplify the process, exported raw procurement data from Beacon into Excel, saved it locally, then re-uploaded it into Compass. She didn't preserve data types. She didn't preserve keys. She didn't preserve anything except confidence. The result, Vanguard's compliance score, normally a steady 88 to 91, generated at 47. 47. Which triggered an automated escalation to Vanguard's legal and internal audit teams because Compass was designed, by me, to treat low compliance scores as potential fraud indicators. That was not a bug. That was the point. At 2:18 p.m. Thursday, Martin called me again. Elena, he said, voice flat, Meridian just sent us a compliance score of 47. Do you understand how catastrophic that looks? Yes, I said. Is it accurate? No, I said. A beat. Can Meridian fix it? They can, I said. If they follow the methodology. Martin's voice sharpened. Do they know the methodology? No, I said. He went quiet then. Elena, are you willing to consult? Directly. Not through Meridian. There it was. The relational shift. I could picture Diane's face if she heard those words. The way her blazer would suddenly feel less like armor and more like costume. I'm willing, I said, under contract. Through Vanguard. Martin didn't hesitate. Name your rate. On the call, I gave him a number I could live with. $275 an hour, minimum 20 hours a week, 3-month term. Not because I wanted to punish Meridian. Because I was done subsidizing incompetence. Martin said, send it today. We'll have a legal draft. At 3:06 p.m., Diane called again. This time she didn't bother with brightness. Her voice was tight, rushed, like she was walking fast down a hallway. Elena, I need you to be reasonable, she said. Vanguard is escalating and Brooke is doing her best, but the system is honestly, it's not user-friendly. Not user-friendly. Compass was perfectly friendly to people who knew what they were doing. You fired the user, I said. Diane made a frustrated sound. We did not fire you. Your role was eliminated. There's a difference. Not to my paycheck, I said. She pushed on, words tumbling. Elena, we can offer you a retention bonus if you come back as a contractor for a few weeks. Just to stabilize. We'll pay you, let's say, $85 an hour. That's generous. I actually smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was so revealing. She thought the value was in the hours. Not the knowledge. No, I said. Why are you doing this? Diane snapped, and there it was, the first glimpse of real emotion slipping through her rehearsed tone. You're hurting the company. I'm not doing anything, I said. You did. By the end of that week, the legal layer surfaced. Vanguard's legal department sent Meridian a formal letter citing Section 9.4 and requesting written confirmation that I would remain key personnel on their account, or they would initiate termination for cause within 30 days. Meridian had 72 hours to respond. And Diane had just told Vanguard, without meaning to, that she'd replaced me with her sister. Vanessa texted me at 9:44 p.m. Friday. Board is asking questions now. Real ones. 2 weeks in, the first real loss hit. Vanguard paused their monthly payment. $983,000 held in dispute until Meridian resolved material service deficiencies. That pause rippled through Meridian's cash flow like a stone through shallow water. Suddenly the CFO was in meetings he didn't want to be in. Suddenly the CEO cared about analytics. And Diane, the woman who'd told me I was being transitioned out, showed up in my life like an unpaid bill. She called at 7:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. No greeting. No performance. Elena, she said, voice hoarse, we need to fix this. We? I asked. She inhaled shakily. They're going to terminate. Vanguard is going to terminate. Do you understand what that does? That's an $11.8 million account. Yes, I said. Okay, so help us, she said, and the plea was so naked it almost sounded like another person. I'll do whatever. Title change. Money. You can come back as senior manager. We'll give you $165,000. I had been making $108,000. Even in her desperation, she revealed the truth. They could have paid me. They just didn't want to until the pain reached them personally. My terms are simple, I said. Diane's breath caught. Okay. 1, I said. Brooke is removed from Vanguard immediately. What? Diane snapped. No, she's not qualified, I said. Calm. Final. Diane tried to argue, words rushing. She's learning. She's Elena. You're being unfair. 2, I continued, not reacting. Meridian issues a written acknowledgement to Vanguard that the compliance score error was caused by internal process deviation, not Vanguard behavior. Diane swallowed audibly. 3, I said, if you want me back at Meridian, I return as analytics manager with authority over client delivery methods. Not under you. Silence. Diane's voice came out thin. You want my job. I want accountability, I said. Your job is just where it happens to live. She made a sound half laugh, half sob. This is insane. You can't. I can, I said. Vanguard already asked. That was when my phone started doing the thing it does when a system is failing and everyone suddenly remembers your name. Vanessa called. Denise from finance called Denisha, not my Denise, a different Denise with a voice like gravel and a habit of telling the truth too directly. Even Raj from engineering, who'd stayed mostly out of it, texted, "If you come back, please make her stop touching data." Diane was still on the line, breathing hard. "You're doing this on purpose," she whispered. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. She'd finally reached the part where her emotions wrote the story for her. "I'm not coming back under you," I repeated. "And I'm not coaching your sister through an $11.8 million renewal." Diane's voice broke, sharp and ugly. "Then you're going to ruin all of us." I spoke quietly. "No, just you." Before I tell you what happened next, you might be wondering the same thing everyone asks when the person who got fired ends up holding the leverage. Why didn't I just walk away? Why didn't I take the satisfaction and leave them to their mess? That's exactly what I'll cover in next week's video, so make sure you're subscribed. 3 weeks in, the failures stopped being isolated incidents and started becoming what they always were, a pattern. Vanguard wasn't just withholding payment anymore. They'd escalated to their legal team, and legal teams don't escalate unless someone's already decided the relationship is over. They're just deciding how expensive the exit will be. On a Wednesday morning at 8:47 a.m., I got a call from Martin Cho. "Elena," he said, voice clipped and businesslike, "we've made a decision." I waited. "We're terminating our contract with Meridian effective 30 days from today," he continued. Section 9.4 violation. Material service deficiency. "We're invoking the key personnel clause." I felt something settle in my chest. Not surprise. Confirmation. "Understood," I said. Martin paused, then his voice softened slightly, not warm, but human. "We'd like to continue working with you. Directly. Not through Meridian." "I'm already contracted through you," I said. "I know," Martin said. "I mean permanently. We're building out an internal analytics function. We want you to lead it." I blinked, stared at my kitchen wall. The crack near the ceiling was still there. "What's the role?" I asked. "Director of Procurement Analytics," Martin said. "You'd report to me. $185,000 base. 20% bonus target. Full benefits. You'd build the team." I did the math silently. That was $77,000 more than Meridian had paid me. For doing work I already knew how to do, for a client who already trusted me. "Send me the offer letter," I said. "Already drafted," Martin replied. "You'll have it in an hour." He hung up. At 9:14 a.m., Diane called me. Her voice was shaking. Not with anger. With panic. "Elena, what did you do?" she said, words tumbling over each other. "Vanguard just sent a termination notice. They're citing you. They're saying we violated key personnel terms by removing you without consent." "You did," I said. "You told them to do this," Diane snapped, voice rising. You poisoned them against us." I leaned back in my chair, phone pressed to my ear, and felt the faintest flicker of something that might have been amusement if I had the energy. "Diane," I said, calm and factual, "I didn't tell Vanguard anything they didn't already know. You fired me. You replaced me with someone unqualified. You didn't notify the client. The system failed. That's not poison. That's cause and effect." Diane made a choked sound. "We can fix this. We can, Elena, please. If you just tell them it was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't," I said. "Then what do you want?" she shouted, and I could hear the desperation cracking through her voice like ice under weight. "Money? A title? What?" "Nothing from you," I said. Silence. Then, quieter, almost a whisper, "You're destroying us." "No," I said. "You're just watching what you built fall apart." I hung up. That afternoon, 2 more things happened in quick succession. First, Meridian's second-largest client, ArcLight Manufacturing, $4.7 million annually, sent an email to Vanessa asking if the recent leadership changes in analytics would affect their quarterly compliance reporting. Translation: they'd heard about Vanguard, and they were nervous. Second, Brooke Kellerman sent me a LinkedIn message. It was long, rambling, full of exclamation points and phrases like, "super grateful for any guidance, and I know there's been some tension, but I really want to learn." I read it twice. Then I archived it without responding. Not because I was cruel. Because teaching someone to do a job they took from you isn't mentorship. It's complicity. By the end of that third week, Meridian's finance team had tallied the damage in a way that made even the CEO pay attention. $983,000 in withheld Vanguard payments. $11.8 million in annual recurring revenue now formally terminated. $4.7 million in ArcLight revenue at risk due to confidence concerns. $340,000 in emergency consulting fees paid to an outside firm Diane hired to stabilize Compass, a firm that, within 48 hours, told her the system wasn't broken, the operator was. Total financial exposure, $17,823,000. And the number that made the board actually move, Meridian's projected annual revenue was $64 million. Vanguard alone represented 18.4% of that. Losing them wasn't a bad quarter. It was a structural crisis. Vanessa called me that Friday evening. Her voice was low, careful, like she was calling from a closet. "Elena," she said, "the board is meeting Monday. Emergency session." I heard, I said, because Denise Shaw from finance had already texted me a screenshot of the calendar invite with the subject line, "Vanguard loss, remediation strategy." Vanessa continued, "They're going to ask about you." "What are they going to ask?" I said. "If you'd come back," Vanessa said, "as Diane's replacement." I sat with that for a moment. The light outside my window was fading, golden and soft, the kind of light that makes you feel like the world is indifferent to corporate drama, because it is. "What's Diane saying?" I asked. Vanessa exhaled. "She's saying you're sabotaging her. That you're bitter. That Brooke just needs more time." "And what are you saying?" I asked. Vanessa's voice hardened. "I'm saying Diane hired her unqualified sister, violated a client contract, and cost us $11.8 million. And if the board doesn't fix it, I'm leaving too." That was Vanessa. Honest when it mattered. "Good," I said. By week 5, the crisis had metastasized from financial to reputational. Someone, probably a Vanguard employee, possibly someone in their legal department, had mentioned the key personnel violation in a procurement industry Slack channel. Not with names. Just details. Enough details that people in the industry started connecting dots. A reporter from Supply Chain Dive reached out to Meridian for comment on reports of client service disruptions tied to personnel changes. Meridian's PR team issued a bland statement. Meridian Solutions remains committed to client success and operational excellence. The article ran anyway. It didn't name Vanguard, but it didn't need to. The industry is small. People talk. On a Tuesday morning, the CEO of Meridian, a man named Gordon Petrie, 61, silver-haired, the kind of executive who'd built the company in the 90s and still thought loyalty was a renewable resource, called me directly. Not through Diane. Not through HR, directly. "Ms. Voss," he said, voice formal and strained, "I'd like to speak with you about returning to Meridian in a leadership capacity." "What capacity?" I asked. Gordon cleared his throat. "Director of Client Analytics. You'd oversee all client-facing analytics operations. Reporting directly to me." "What about Diane?" I asked. A pause. Not a long one. Just long enough to tell me the decision had already been made. "Diane will be transitioning to a strategic advisory role," Gordon said, "which is corporate for. She's being moved somewhere she can't do damage while we figure out how to fire her quietly." "And Brooke?" I asked. Another pause, shorter. "Brooke's employment will conclude at the end of this week." I felt something in my chest, not satisfaction exactly. More like the quiet recognition that gravity works. "What's the offer?" I asked. Gordon didn't hesitate. Director title, $210,000 base, 25% bonus. You'd have full authority over team structure, client delivery, and vendor relationships. You'd rebuild what we lost. I thought about that. $210,000. Nearly double what they'd paid me before they fired me. "I'll need it in writing," I said, with a clause that prevents retaliation or reassignment without board approval. "Done," Gordon said. "And I'll need Diane removed from any oversight of analytics, client success, or procurement," I said. Gordon was quiet for a beat. Then agreed. One more thing, I said. Yes. I want a formal acknowledgement in my offer letter that my termination was a personnel error, not performance-related. Gordon exhaled slowly. Ms. Voss, we're offering you a significant role. I want it in writing, I said, voice calm and immovable, or Vanguard isn't the only client you'll lose. Silence. Then, you'll have it. That afternoon, Diane called me one last time. Her voice was raw, stripped of all the corporate polish, all the buzzwords, all the performance. Just a person who'd finally run out of ways to avoid the truth. Elena, she said, and I could hear her crying, please don't do this. I didn't ask what this was. I knew. She meant, don't take the job. Don't accept the role that used to be hers. Don't let the consequences reach her. Diane, I said quietly, you fired me to hire your sister. You violated a client contract. You cost the company $11.8 million. I didn't do that. You did. She sobbed once, sharp and ugly. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I said. I'm going to lose everything, she whispered. I thought about that. About the weekends I'd lost. The family events I'd missed. The 13 years I'd given to a company that discarded me for someone who couldn't read a pivot table. Yes, I said. You are. I hung up. The following Monday, I walked into Meridian Solutions for the first time in 5 weeks. Not as a terminated employee. As director of client analytics. Gordon met me in the lobby, an unnecessary gesture, the kind of thing executives do when they're trying to signal that the hierarchy has shifted and they want everyone to see it. Welcome back, he said, extending a hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, performative. The handshake of a man who'd spent a career pretending confidence was the same as competence. Thank you, I said. He walked me upstairs. The office looked the same. Same desks. Same fluorescent lights. Same cascade conference room with its floor-to-ceiling windows. But the people looked different. Quieter. More careful. The way people look when they've just watched someone get fired and they're not sure who's next. Vanessa was waiting in my new office, an actual office, with a door and a window, the kind of office Diane used to have. She smiled, small and genuine. You're really back. I'm really back, I said. Vanessa handed me a folder. ArcLight wants a call this afternoon. They heard your director now. They want reassurance. They'll get it, I said. At 2 p.m., Gordon held an all-hands meeting in the large conference room on the second floor. He stood at the front, hands clasped, expression serious in the way executives look when they're about to deliver news they should have delivered weeks ago. I want to address the recent changes in our analytics leadership, Gordon began. Diane Kellerman has transitioned to an advisory role, effective immediately. Elena Voss has returned as Director of Client Analytics, reporting directly to me. I watched the room. Some people looked relieved. Some looked confused. A few looked at me with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. I wasn't sure which. Gordon continued, we've also made the difficult decision to part ways with Brooke Kellerman. We're committed to rebuilding client trust and operational excellence, and that starts with accountability. Accountability. The word hung in the air like a confession. After the meeting, I saw Brooke in the hallway. She was carrying a small box, personal items, a coffee mug, a framed photo, and her eyes were red. She looked young, smaller than I remembered, like someone who'd been told they were special and then discovered they weren't. She saw me and stopped. For a moment, I thought she might say something. Apologize. Argue. Cry. But she just looked at me, eyes wet and lost, and walked past. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. That week, I made 3 calls. First, to Martin Cho at Vanguard. Martin, I said, I'm back at Meridian as director. I'm rebuilding the team. I'd like to discuss what it would take for Vanguard to reconsider. Martin was quiet for a moment. Then, Elena, we like you. But we've already moved on. We're building internal. I understand, I said. If that changes, you know where to find me. I do, Martin said. And for what it's worth, good luck. You deserved better. Second, to ArcLight Manufacturing. Their VP of Procurement, a woman named Sandra Okafor, answered on the second ring. Elena, she said, voice warm but cautious. "We heard you're back." "I am," I said. "And I want to make sure you're comfortable with our reporting process going forward." Sandra exhaled, relieved. "Honestly, we were about to start an RFP. But if you're leading analytics again, we'll stay." "Good," I said. "Let's schedule a quarterly review. I want to make sure we're meeting your needs." "Appreciated," Sandra said. Third, to Denise Shaw in finance. "Denise," I said, "I need the full financial impact report. Everything. Vanguard loss, ArcLight risk, consulting fees, all of it." Denise didn't ask why. She just said, "I'll send it in an hour." She did. The final tally was worse than I'd expected. $11.8 million in lost Vanguard revenue. $1,140,000 in withheld and disputed payments. $480,000 in emergency consulting and legal fees. For $0.7 million in ArcLight revenue that had been at risk but was now stabilized. Total direct financial impact, $13,420,000. And the number that mattered most, Meridian's valuation had dropped 22% in investor discussions because the Vanguard loss signaled operational instability. Gordon called me into his office that Friday. "Elena," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I want to be clear. You have full authority to rebuild this team. Hire who you need. Fire who you need. I won't interfere." "Good," I said. He hesitated. "I also want to apologize." I looked at him. His expression was sincere, or at least a convincing imitation of it. "For what?" I asked. "For not seeing what was happening sooner," he said. "Diane assured me Brooke was qualified. I trusted her judgment." I didn't respond immediately. I just watched him, this man who'd built a company and then let nepotism nearly destroy it because he didn't want to ask hard questions. "Trust isn't the same as oversight," I said. Gordon nodded slowly. "No, it's not." 6 months later, my life looked different in ways that mattered. I was still at Meridian, but Meridian had changed. I'd rebuilt the analytics team from 4 people to 9. I'd hired 2 senior analysts with procurement backgrounds, a data engineer who actually understood ETL pipelines, and a junior analyst who reminded me of myself at 26, quiet, confident, hungry to prove something. I'd rewritten our client onboarding process, implemented quarterly business reviews for every account over $2 million, and built a new escalation protocol so no client would ever wake up to a missing report again. ArcLight renewed. So did 3 other mid-tier clients who'd been nervous. We signed 2 new enterprise clients worth a combined $8.4 million annually, partly because I'd started speaking at procurement conferences and partly because competence has a way of becoming its own marketing. My salary as director was exactly what Gordon promised, $210,000 base, 25% bonus. The bonus hit in full my first year because we exceeded client retention targets. I took a 2-week vacation to Vancouver. Actual vacation. No laptop. No phone calls. Just rain and coffee and the kind of quiet that comes from not being the only person holding something together. As for Diane, I heard she took a role at a smaller firm doing strategic consulting, which is what people call it when they can't get hired for what they used to do. Her LinkedIn still said she drove transformational change at Meridian. I didn't correct her. The truth was already on record. Brooke, from what I gathered through the industry grapevine, moved back home and took a job in marketing for a local real estate company. Not analytics. Not procurement. Something safer, where enthusiasm mattered more than precision. I didn't follow her career. I didn't need to. Vanessa stayed at Meridian and was promoted to SVP of Customer Success. We got coffee every other week, and she never once said, "I told you so," even though she had every right to. Gordon retired 18 months after I returned, handing the CEO role to someone younger, sharper, less interested in loyalty as a substitute for accountability. The new CEO asked me, 6 months into her tenure, if I'd consider VP of Analytics. I said no, not because I didn't want it, because I'd learned something important. Titles don't protect you. Systems do. And I'd rather build systems than manage people who don't respect them. 3 years later, if you're wondering whether I felt satisfied, the answer is mostly. I didn't enjoy watching Diane lose her career. I didn't enjoy watching Brooke realize she'd been used as a pawn in someone else's ambition. I didn't enjoy being fired, sued by implication, or forced to prove my worth to people who should have already known it. But I did enjoy quietly, privately, the moment when competence stopped being optional and started being the standard. Because that's what this story is really about. Not revenge. Standards. If you've ever felt replaceable in a job where you were irreplaceable, I hope this shows that standing your ground works. I share workplace strategies and corporate analysis every week that help you navigate professional betrayal. Like and subscribe if you found value here. Remember, the people who underestimate you aren't insulting your abilities. They're confessing they never understood what you were doing in the first place, and the bill always comes due.